Hello, and welcome back to Whispers in the Dark, the channel where we pull back the curtain on the stories that seem too horrific to be true. We delve into the shadows of human nature, exploring cases that challenge our understanding of the people we think we know. The story we are about to unfold is one of the most unsettling we have ever covered. It's a tale of love, fame, and a secret so monstrous it eclipses the brightest of spotlights. It's the story of a radiant, pregnant singer, adored by millions, who vanished without a trace. The police investigation that followed would unravel a truth so profoundly evil. It would leave a nation speechless and redefine the meaning of a family bond. What happens when the hand that is supposed to rock the cradle is the same one that digs the grave? We are about to find out. Before we journey into this heart-wrenching and terrifying case, if you appreciate in-depth storytelling and want to support our investigation into the darkness, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss what we uncover. Now turn down the lights, settle in. We're about to tell you the story of Alara Lane and the shocking truth behind her disappearance. Chapter 1. The Silent Encore. The world knew Alara Lane as the Golden Nightingale. Her voice, a sublime blend of honeyed warmth and ethereal power, had captivated millions. Her songs were anthems of love, hope, and tender melancholy that seemed to speak directly to the soul of a generation. At 28, she was not just a pop star. She was a phenomenon. Her marriage to Liam Corbin, a handsome and successful architect, only added to the fairy tale. They were the golden couple, their every public appearance a testament to a seemingly perfect love. When they announced Alara was pregnant with their first child, the world rejoiced with them. The Golden Nightingale was bringing a new voice into the world. Then, one crisp October Tuesday, the music stopped. It began as a ripple of confusion. Alara missed a scheduled morning interview for a major radio show. Her manager, a perpetually frazzled but fiercely loyal man named Marcus, tried her phone. It went straight to voicemail. He called Liam, who was at a construction site across the city. Liam's voice was casual at first, tinged with amusement. "She's probably still asleep, Marcus. You know how she is, hibernating for two now." But when Liam returned to their sprawling, glass-walled home in the Hollywood Hills and found it empty, the amusement curdled into concern. Alara's car was in the garage. Her purse, containing her keys and wallet, was on the marble countertop in the kitchen. A half-finished cup of herbal tea sat beside it, still lukewarm. The only thing missing was Alara herself and her phone. The security system had been disarmed by her code at 7:02 a.m. when she let their dog, a golden retriever named Sonnet, out into the garden. The footage showed Sonnet bounding back in a few minutes later, but Alara never reappeared. The gate to the property was closed, with no signs of forced entry. It was as if she had dissolved into the morning mist that clung to the canyons. By nightfall, concern had spiraled into full-blown panic. Liam, his face a mask of disbelief, called the police. The disappearance of Alara Lane was no ordinary missing persons case. Within hours, it was the #1 news story in the country. News vans camped outside their gate like vultures, their satellite dishes pointed at the silent house. The case fell to Detective Miles Harding of the LAPD's Robbery-Homicide Division. Harding was a man who seemed to be carved from granite and cynicism. He was old school, a detective who trusted his gut more than algorithms and saw the worst of humanity on a daily basis. He had little patience for the glitz of Hollywood, viewing celebrities as just a different class of victim or suspect. When he arrived at the Corbin Lane residence, the scene was already a circus of uniformed officers, forensic technicians, and the palpable hum of media frenzy just beyond the police tape. Liam Corbin looked broken. He sat on a stark white sofa, his head in his hands, his usual suave demeanor shattered. He walked Harding through the morning, his voice cracking. "She was fine, perfectly fine. We had breakfast. She was excited about the nursery. We were arguing, playfully, about paint colors." Harding's eyes, the color of faded denim, scanned the pristine home. It was a place of minimalist perfection: cool stone, gleaming steel, and vast windows that looked out over a seemingly infinite city. It felt less like a home and more like a museum exhibit on wealth. Any problems, Mr. Corbin? Anyone she was afraid of? Stalkers? Professional jealousies? There are always obsessive fans, Liam admitted. Marcus handles that. But no one specific, no credible threats. Everyone loved her. Everyone loves a star, Harding thought, until they don't. One of the first people to arrive at the house, even before the police, was Liam's mother, Annalise Corbin. She was a striking woman in her late 50s, with a posture as rigid as her perfectly coiffed silver hair. Annalise was a retired art history professor, a woman of refined tastes and quiet intensity. She moved through the house with a somber grace, a pillar of strength for her distraught son. She made tea, spoke to the officers in hushed, intelligent tones, and held Liam's hand, her face etched with dignified grief. She was like a daughter to me, Annalise told Detective Harding, her voice a soft, cultured murmur. Alara was a light, so full of life, especially now with the baby on the way. Her eyes welled with tears, but none fell. She was the picture of controlled sorrow. I was just with her yesterday. We went shopping for the nursery. She was ecstatic. Harding watched her, his gaze unwavering. In his experience, tragedy rarely brought out the best in people. It simply revealed what was already there. Annalise Corbin presented as the perfect, grieving mother-in-law. Almost too perfect. The first 48 hours of the investigation were a frustrating blur of dead ends. The forensic team found nothing amiss in the house or the garden. Alara's phone's last ping was from a cell tower near her home, shortly after she disappeared, before it was either turned off or the battery died. Her digital footprint went cold. No activity on her credit cards, bank accounts, or social media. The police explored every conceivable avenue. They investigated fan clubs, digging into the backgrounds of individuals with a history of stalking. They interviewed her record label executives, rival singers, and former band members. The narrative was universally consistent. Alara Lane was a sweetheart, a professional, a genuinely kind person in a notoriously cutthroat industry. The theory of a kidnapping for ransom was floated, but no demand ever came. Days turned into a week. The media speculation grew wilder. Was it a secret lover? Had she run away from the pressures of fame? Was it a publicity stunt gone horribly wrong? Each theory was a dagger in Liam's heart. He gave a tearful press conference, begging for his wife's return, his face pale and haggard on every screen in America. Annalise stood beside him, a silent, stoic presence, her hand on his shoulder. Detective Harding, however, was not looking at the sensational headlines. He was looking at the family. It was almost always the family. He ran deep financial checks on Liam. The architect's business was successful, but there were whispers of a recent high-stakes project that was over budget. Was there a life insurance policy? Yes, a substantial one, as expected for a couple of their wealth. But there was no evidence of foul play on his part. His alibi was solid, was at a supervised construction site with 20 other people when Alara vanished. So Harding turned his attention to the mother-in-law, Annalise Corbin. On the surface, she was pristine. A respected academic, widowed for a decade, living in a charming, meticulously kept home in Pasadena. She doted on her only son, Liam. By all accounts, she had welcomed Alara into the family with open arms. Yet something bothered Harding. He reviewed her initial statement. We went shopping for the nursery. He had his team pull the security footage from the high-end baby boutique she had named. There they were, Annalise and Alara, browsing through cribs and mobiles. They looked like any other excited grandmother and mother-to-be. But Harding watched it again and then a third time. He noticed the body language. Alara would pick something up, her face bright with excitement, and Annalise would smile, but the smile never quite reached her eyes. There was a stiffness in her posture, a subtle, almost imperceptible shake of the head at one of Alara's choices. It was nothing concrete, nothing he could ever use, but it was a flicker of discord in an otherwise perfect picture. He decided to pay Annalise a visit at her home. It was a world away from Elara and Liam's modern palace. Her house was filled with antiques, dark wood, and the scent of lemon oil and old books. Every object had its place. It was a house that felt curated, not lived in. "Detective," she said, greeting him at the door. Her expression was one of weary resignation. "Any news?" "Not yet, Mrs. Corbin. I just have a few more routine questions." He sat in a stiff-backed armchair in her living room while she prepared tea. He noted the precision of her movements, the way she arranged the cups and saucers on the silver tray. Control. This woman was all about control. "You and Elara were close," he began, a statement, not a question. "Very," she said, handing him a cup. "We had a wonderful relationship. We both loved Liam and we both loved art in our own ways. Her music, my paintings. Any disagreements? It's normal in families, especially with a baby on the way. People have different ideas about things." Annalise's smile was thin, a pale slash of red lipstick. "Nothing of the sort. I was simply thrilled. My son is my world, detective. His happiness is all that matters to me. And Elara made him happy." Harding took a sip of the tea. It was Earl Grey, fragrant and hot. He let the silence hang in the air for a moment. He looked at the photographs on the mantelpiece. There were dozens of Liam as a boy at his graduation on his wedding day. There was only one small, framed photo of Liam and Elara together, almost as an afterthought at the very end. "Your garden is beautiful," Harding remarked, glancing out the window at a perfectly manicured collection of roses and exotic plants. A flicker of genuine pride crossed Annalise's face. "Thank you. It's my sanctuary. I cultivate rare orchids. And my herbs. Takes a great deal of patience and specific knowledge." Harding stayed for another 20 minutes, asking innocuous questions about her late husband, her career, her relationship with her son. He left with nothing but a vague sense of unease. Annalise Corbin was polished, intelligent, and unshakable. Her story was perfect. Her grief was perfect. Her house was perfect. As he drove away, Harding couldn't shake a thought. Nature, in its rawest form, was never perfect. It was messy, unpredictable, and often savage. Annalise's world, like her garden, was a place of intense, meticulous cultivation. He wondered what kind of secrets she had to prune, and what kind of weeds she had to pull, to maintain such flawless order. The search for Elara Lane had been focused on the outside world, on the strangers and the shadows. Harding's gut was now telling him, with a cold certainty, that he needed to look closer to home. The monster they were looking for might not be a stranger at all. It might be the one offering everyone a cup of tea. Chapter 2. The cracks in the porcelain. 2 weeks after Elara Lane's disappearance, the case had grown cold. The media storm had settled into a relentless, dreary rain of speculation. The public's hope, once a blazing fire, had dwindled to embers. Tributes were laid at the gates of her home, a makeshift shrine of flowers, teddy bears, and handwritten notes that fluttered in the autumn wind. Liam had retreated from the public eye, a ghost haunting the empty halls of his perfect house. The investigation was drowning in a sea of useless tips and false leads. Detective Harding felt the pressure from his superiors and the public, but he ignored it. He was a patient man, a fisherman who knew that some truths lay in the deepest, murkiest waters and could only be brought to the surface with a slow, steady hand. He kept pulling on the one thread that felt out of place. Annalise Corbin. He started by digging into her life with a quiet obsession. He learned that Annalise had been a formidable academic, but had been forced into early retirement after a series of acrimonious disputes within her department. Colleagues described her as brilliant, but also as rigid, controlling, and possessing a vindictive streak if she felt her authority was challenged. Her late husband, a mild-mannered financier, had left her a comfortable, but not extravagant inheritance. Her son, Liam, was the absolute center of her universe. Harding's team uncovered financial records that painted an interesting picture. Annalise lived well, but her expenses often outstripped her income. In the last year, She had received 3 large cash transfers from a joint account belonging to Liam and Alara. It looked like a son helping his mother. But the timing was curious. Each transfer followed a major announcement from Alara: the release of her chart-topping album, the announcement of her world tour, and finally, the news of her pregnancy. It was almost as if Annalise was taking a tax on her son's happiness. The real breakthrough, however, came from a far more human source. Harding assigned 2 of his best detectives to re-interview everyone in Alara's inner circle. They spoke to hairdressers, backup singers, sound engineers, and, most importantly, Alara's personal assistant, a young, nervous woman named Chloe. In the first interview, Chloe had been terrified and starstruck. This time, coaxed gently by a detective who offered her a tissue and a promise of anonymity, she opened up. "Mrs. Corbin." She was difficult. Chloe began, her voice barely a whisper. "She was always polite. Please, thank you." But it was the way she looked at Alara sometimes, like she was something, an obstacle. Chloe recounted small, seemingly insignificant moments that, when woven together, created a disturbing tapestry. Annalise would often visit the house unannounced, using the key Liam had given her. She would rearrange the furniture, criticizing Alara's modern taste as cold and impersonal. She would give backhanded compliments about Alara's career. "It must be so exhausting, all that screaming and adoration. I do hope it doesn't take too much of a toll on the baby." The most telling story was about the nursery. Alara, with her artistic flair, had wanted a whimsical theme, with hand-painted murals of mythical creatures and a mobile of sparkling stars. Annalise had insisted on a traditional heirloom-style nursery, all cream lace and dark wood. "A Corbin child needs a dignified start in life," she had said, a statement that dripped with condescension. "They had a huge argument about it," Chloe revealed, twisting the tissue in her hands. Alara finally put her foot down. She told Annalise, very respectfully, that she and Liam would be making the decisions for their child. "I was in the next room, and I heard Mrs. Corbin's voice. It wasn't loud. It was worse. It was quiet and cold as ice. She said, 'You may have my son's heart for now, you little songbird. But blood is blood. And it is thicker than anything. Blood is thicker than anything.'" The words echoed in Harding's mind. It was the key to understanding Annalise. She didn't see Alara as a daughter-in-law. She saw her as a rival, an outsider who had stolen her son and was now about to dilute her bloodline with a child she couldn't control. Armed with this new perspective, Harding revisited the physical evidence, or lack thereof. There were no signs of a struggle in the house. This meant Alara either left willingly with someone she knew, or she was incapacitated so quickly and quietly that she never had a chance to fight back. The latter seemed more likely, the half-finished cup of herbal tea on the counter. It was a long shot, but it was all he had. He sent a team back to the house to retrieve the mug, which had been bagged as evidence but largely ignored. He sent it to the lab with a specific request: test for any unusual organic compounds, anything beyond standard tea and honey. He also sent a forensics team, armed with a warrant, to Annalise Corbin's home in Pasadena. The official reason was a routine follow-up search. The real reason was Harding's gut feeling about her meticulously kept garden. While one team carefully took soil samples and cuttings from Annalise's herb garden, another team conducted a soft interview with her at the station. She was the picture of composure, expressing her disappointment at the lack of progress in the investigation. "Detective, it has been weeks," she said, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "Surely, you should be pursuing the real monsters out there, not bothering a grieving family." "We believe the monster may be closer than you think," Harding replied, his voice flat. He watched her for a reaction, but her face was an unreadable mask of porcelain. The first lab report came back late that evening. It was from the tea. The primary ingredient was chamomile, as expected. But there was a secondary compound the toxicologist couldn't immediately identify. It had potent sedative properties. Extremely potent. When cross-referenced with the botanical database, it matched a rare, hybrid species of oleander, a plant known for its beautiful flowers and lethally toxic leaves. A dose of the size found in the tea would be enough to render a person unconscious in minutes, and would be particularly dangerous for a pregnant woman. Harding felt a chill run down his spine. The second report came in an hour later. It was from the forensics team that had searched Annalise's garden. They had found several plants, including a thriving, beautifully cultivated bush hidden behind a row of roses. It was the same rare hybrid oleander. He now had means and motive. Annalise had the knowledge to cultivate a poison that was found in Alara's teacup. She had a deep-seated pathological jealousy of her daughter-in-law. But it wasn't enough. Circumstantial evidence, no matter how strong, was a difficult sell to a jury. He was still missing the most crucial piece of the puzzle, Alara herself. He had a theory, a monstrous, unthinkable theory that began to form in the darkest corners of his mind. But he had no proof. He needed to push Annalise. He needed to shatter her perfect, porcelain facade. He called her in again, this time to a stark, cold interview room. He didn't sit opposite her. Instead, he paced the room, letting the silence stretch. He placed 2 photographs on the table in front of her. The first was a beautiful, smiling picture of Alara, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. The second was a botanical photograph of the hybrid oleander, its delicate pink flowers belying its deadly nature. Annalise glanced at them, her expression unchanged. A flower, detective? Is this what your entire investigation has been reduced to? This flower was found in your garden, Mrs. Corbin, Harding said, his voice low and dangerous. And traces of it were found in the tea Alara was drinking on the morning she disappeared. The tea you so kindly brought her the day before, wasn't it? As a special blend to help her sleep. For the first time, a crack appeared in the porcelain. A flicker of something fear. Anger flashed in her eyes before it was suppressed. I bring her herbal teas all the time. I have no idea what that is. Harding leaned forward, his hands flat on the table. I think you do. I think you cultivated it. I think you encouraged her to drink it. I think you went to her house that morning, knowing she would be sleepy, groggy, helpless. She trusted you. She let you in. And you betrayed that trust in the most horrific way imaginable. This is absurd, she hissed, her voice losing its cultured softness. You have nothing. You haven't found her. You have no body. Harding stood up straight. The moment had come. He was about to voice the unthinkable theory that had been tormenting him. Oh, I don't think we'll ever find a body, Mrs. Corbin. Not a whole one, at least. He paused, letting his words sink in. We also searched your house. Your whole house. The kitchen, specifically. It was immaculately clean. Almost surgically clean. You used bleach, didn't you? A lot of it. But bleach doesn't destroy everything. It doesn't destroy the tiny fragments that get into the drains, into the pipes. He saw the color drain from her face. Her composure was crumbling, shattering into 1,000 pieces. We also noted the recent significant increase in your gas usage. The oven. It's been running at extremely high temperatures for very long periods at odd hours of the night. We also found your new meat grinder, top of the line, and the new, very large freezer in your basement, which was humming away, filled with dozens of neatly wrapped packages. You labeled them as veal and pork. Annalise stared at him, her mouth slightly agape, her eyes wide with a dawning horror not of her actions, but of their discovery. Harding's voice dropped to a cold, grim whisper. We're testing the contents of those packages now, Mrs. Corbin. We're testing the residue from your kitchen drains. You were a historian. You knew that some ancient cultures believed that to consume one's enemy was to absorb their power. Is that what this was about? Destroying the rival who was taking your son? Who was carrying a child you couldn't control? Was it about making her disappear in the most absolute, most profane way possible? Tell me, Annalise, what have you been cooking? The porcelain mask finally broke. A guttural, animalistic sound tore from Annalise Corbin's throat. It was not a sound of grief or remorse. It was the sound of pure, undiluted rage. The truth was out, and it was more horrifying than anyone could have ever imagined. Chapter 3. The Abattoir of Truth. The confession did not come in a flood of remorse. Came in a torrent of vitriol. Once Annalise Corbin's carefully constructed world of dignified grief was shattered by Detective Harding's words. The creature beneath was unleashed. The quiet, refined art professor was gone, replaced by a woman contorted by a rage so pure and ancient it seemed to suck the very air from the interview room. She was a parasite. Annalise spat, her eyes burning with a hateful fire. A vapid little songbird with a pretty voice and an empty head. She was clinging to my son, draining his ambition, turning him into a common, domesticated man. He was meant for greatness, not for picking out nursery colors. Harding let her talk. He signaled to the detective behind the one-way mirror to ensure the recording was crystal clear. This was not a time for questions. It was a time to let the venom pour out. Annalise recounted her version of events, a narrative warped by jealousy and a terrifying sense of ownership over her son. She had seen Ilara's pregnancy not as a blessing, but as the final, unforgivable act of theft. It was the biological cementing of Ilara's place in Liam's life, a place Annalise believed was rightfully hers. The child would not just be Ilara's. It would be a constant, living symbol of her own displacement. That baby? She sneered, the word baby sounding like a curse. It was not a Corbin. It was hers. It would have her eyes, her sentimental foolishness. It would pull him further and further away from me, until I was nothing but a memory. The plan had been meticulous, born of a cold, calculating intellect. She had cultivated the hybrid oleander for over a year, a secret weapon hidden in plain sight amongst her prized roses. She had researched its effects, understanding the dosage required to incapacitate without immediately killing. She had brought Ilara the special relaxing tea the afternoon before, knowing her daughter-in-law, trusting and kind, would drink it. On that Tuesday morning, Annalise had let herself into the house just after 7 a.m. She found Ilara just as she had expected, drowsy, confused, and weak. Ilara had smiled, thinking her mother-in-law had come for an early visit. She had offered her a cup of tea. There was no struggle. There was no fight. There was only the cold, methodical execution of a plan. Annalise had guided the drugged Ilara to a chair, and as the young singer slipped into unconsciousness, Annalise had ended her life. What she described next plunged the case from a tragic murder into the realm of unspeakable horror. The details she provided were chillingly practical, devoid of emotion. She was not a monster in a fit of passion. She was an artisan engaged in a gruesome, methodical task. She had brought supplies with her: plastic sheeting, specialized knives, cleaning agents. She was strong and knew what she was doing. She had spent hours in that pristine, white kitchen, turning a place of nourishment into an abattoir. The motive for the cannibalism was as twisted as the act itself. It wasn't about power or ancient rituals, as Harding had guessed. It was about erasure. To leave a body is to leave a shrine, Annalise explained, her voice chillingly calm. It would be a place for Liam to mourn, a place for the world to remember her. I would not allow her that dignity. I would not allow her a grave. I wanted her gone, every last trace, eradicated, turned into nothing more than waste and forgotten meals. How can you mourn something that has ceased to exist in any recognizable form? She had cooked the remains over several days, the high gas usage that had alerted the police. She had disposed of some parts in ways that would never be found. She had ground and packaged the rest, a grotesque parody of domesticity, filling the freezer in her basement. She had even, in an act of supreme psychological cruelty, cooked a meal for her grieving son a week after the murder, a hearty stew, to help him keep his strength up. Liam had eaten the meal, thanking his mother for being his rock, never knowing the monstrous secret simmering on her stove. When the lab results came back, they confirmed the unthinkable. The DNA from the packages in Annalise's freezer was a match for Ilara Lane. The trace evidence from the kitchen drains, though faint, told the same story. The case was sealed. The news broke like a cataclysm. The headline, "Pregnant Singer Murdered and Cooked by Mother-in-Law," was so grotesque, so beyond the pale of normal human evil, that many initially believed it to be a hoax. When the horrifying truth was confirmed, the public's grief turned to revulsion. The Golden Nightingale had not just been silenced. She had been desecrated in the most unimaginable way by the woman who should have protected her. For Liam Corbin, the revelation was not a discovery. It was an obliteration of his entire reality. His wife and unborn child were gone. His mother, the woman who had raised him, was the monster responsible. The love and support she had shown him in the weeks following the disappearance were now revealed to be a sick, manipulative performance. The meals she had made, the hand she had held it, was all part of her horrifying secret. He collapsed, a man utterly destroyed by a truth his mind could not process. Annalise Corbin's trial was a formality. She pled not guilty, her lawyer attempting a defense of insanity. But her confession, her meticulous planning, and her chillingly lucid explanations in court painted a clear picture of a narcissistic, sociopathic mind, not a delusional one. She was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She showed no emotion as the verdict was read. Her face the same mask of cold porcelain she had worn for so long. The case of Alara Lane left deep scars. It became a cautionary tale, a horrifying testament to the darkness that can fester behind a facade of suburban civility. Her music took on a new, tragic poignancy. Her songs of love and hope were now heard through a filter of immense sorrow and horror. The Golden Nightingale was no longer just a pop star. She was a symbol of innocence betrayed. Detective Miles Harding closed the case file, but the story never left him. He had seen countless horrors in his career, but this one was different. It wasn't the act of a madman on the fringes of society. It was the work of a mother, a respected member of the community, driven by the common, human emotions of jealousy and possessiveness, twisted into something demonic. He would forever be haunted by the image of Annalise's perfectly manicured garden, where beautiful, deadly flowers grew. It was a perfect metaphor for the woman herself. Cultured, controlled, and beautiful on the surface, but cultivating a deep, dark, and poisonous root system just beneath the soil. It was a chilling reminder that the most terrifying monsters are not those that hide in the shadows, but those that hide in plain sight, smiling as they offer you a cup of tea.